Let me just reiterate that point. This feature is brought to you by Sentio Capital. Sentio's invest for good philosophy is based on a genuine desire to use their investment skills to the benefit of broader society while also delivering superior returns for clients, regardless of the market conditions. Now, you can visit the website, Sentio-Capital, so Sentio-Capital.com for more information on their Sharia investment products. Sentio Capital, invest for good. Sentio Capital Management is an authorized financial services provider. Now, last year during Ramadan on the Ashraf Garda show, we recently chatted to Sentio Capital more than once. We'll do it again this time around. With me is the director and portfolio manager at Sentio Capital Management, Imtiaz Suliman. Imtiaz, appreciate your time. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Ramadan Mubarak. Juma Mubarak. What do I say? Just TGIF as well. Probably that's the only one missing. Appreciate your time.
Walaikum salam, Ashraf. It's good to be with you again this year, and looking forward to a wonderful Ramadan. And I wish all the viewers Ramadan Karim, and may it be a blessed one for all.
Absolutely, inshallah, right? Let's talk about, I know we touched on it last year, but new audiences all the time. Let's start at the beginning in terms of what is Sentio, why does it exist, what does it do?
Yeah, so Sentio was started in 2007. It was developed as an asset manager, and really it brings together two investment disciplines. So at the time, you had a very traditional way of investing whereby portfolio managers, analysts look at company statements, see what's the best share to buy, and put that in the portfolio. What Sentio really did was a pioneer at that time, and that was to bring in two disciplines of investing. The one is fundamental analysis, that is looking at company balance sheets, income statements, analyzing the results, and also trying to forecast the results going forward. And the second discipline was really the beginning and what we call today and what is widely known as machine learning and artificial intelligence, and really bringing in those two disciplines. And just to give you an example, there's a lot of data that we have today, and data is expanding at an exponential rate. And if we don't use that data, we'll be at a loss. So, for example, you can gather data from people's spending habits by looking at credit card data. All of this data is anonymized, so you don't know the individual, but there is data providers whereby you can get this data. You can really track spending habits in the economy. For example, when inflation is high, people are spending less on discretionary items, which is clothing, fridges, TVs, etc., but they're spending more on food and fuel. And this spending habit changes allows us to track what the potential earnings in a company will be. And by marrying these two disciplines together, that's the investment philosophy of Sentio. And then just to touch on the ethos side, Sentio's tagline is invest for good. And by that we mean investing for the investor that entrusts their money with us, and making sure that we invest that money responsibly, but also being responsible in terms of what we invest into, making sure that the companies are ethical in a sense. And from a Sharia perspective, that comes in naturally from a environmental perspective, social perspective, and governance perspective. And that's also very important. And then lastly, making sure that the company is robust and the employees are all part of the journey that we're on, and they also, follow the similar philosophy.
Okay, let's talk about some of the products that you offer.
Yeah, so we've got two products in the Sharia space. The one is a Sharia equity fund, and the other is a Sharia balance fund. And these are two unit trusts that are very liquid in terms of liquidity. If an investor wants to get their money back, there's no long waiting period, and there's a price for it every day. The differences between the two. So the equity fund invests just in shares. It's a bit more of a higher growth fund, and it's for investors that want a higher return over the longer period. The balance fund is more diversified in terms of which assets it can invest into. For example, It has shares, it has sukuks, which is an income instrument, Sharia compliant income instrument. It can invest in commodities, it can invest in properties, and it gives you a smoother return profile. But also the objective there is to outperform CPI, which is the consumer price index over time. And this is to protect the investors' investment, but also to give them a real return over time.
And how, I mean, interesting you talk about CPI because, inflation has gone up again a little bit, 0.75 the other day. How difficult is that to be able to beat inflation regularly and to give people the type of returns they need, still working in a very ethical space?
Yeah, it's something that we have to keep in mind, but also inflation is cyclical in nature, and by that I mean, when inflation does go up quite considerably, it usually sort of trends down towards the mean or average over time, and this is because of base effects. But from an investment perspective, we have to find instruments that will perform better than CPI, for example. And over the long term, shares do give you a real return, which is a return above CPI. That's around 6%. So its CPI is 7%. You get another 6% on top of that. So you're looking at 13% from a share perspective, but that's over the long term. What we try and do is, find those shares that will outperform, invest in the sukuks, which is the income instruments, and then also quite importantly is investing globally as well. So our funds are allowed to invest up to 45% of the total assets in global markets. So we're not just limited to the South African markets. And this is another important element that helps us achieve the target of CPI plus, because over time the rand does depreciate relative to developed market currencies, and you do get an extra return by investing globally as well.
Okay, great. Any final points you wish to bring up?
Yeah, I think what I want to highlight is that these funds are easily available on the Easy Equities platform, for example. They're also available through any of the brokers if the viewers do use a broker. And I would just like to say that over the long term, what matters the most is saving and saving early on. You can pick the best fund, you can try and beat the market, but if you do save consistently over time, that compounding effect is really what's going to good.
Absolutely. Well, it's a good starting point.
Just make
Perhaps
sure that you're reaching your goal.
And the first starting point is to contact you guys. I mean, there's a website, so sentiocapital.com. That's sentio hyphen or dash capital.com. But also, they're on all social media, including Twitter, Instagram. And for professional people, obviously, you'd follow them on LinkedIn. I expect you to do just that. So that's where you can do that. Imtiaz, appreciate your time. I'm sure we're going to chat next week. Right. Thank you. And in fact, and that number has also come up on the screen as well as the email. Let me get it to you. 880-1994. So 011-880-1994 or email info@sentiocapital.com and a hyphen separating Sentio from capital. So info@sentiocapital.com. Right. We'll chat about, we'll do some champion spotting in a moment. Then we'll chat about the first mosque in our global mosques series this Ramadan. Last year we did local mosques, South African mosques. This year is global. We start with Masjid Al-Aqsa right after this.